congressman who signed that letter is Representative Brendan Boyle of Pennsylvania, and he's joining me right now. Good to see you, Congressman.
All right, good to be back.
So I'd love to get more detail on the letter that you all sent, but first let me also ask you about your reaction to this accepting of a phone call that Trump did of the Taiwanese president. What's your view on that?
Yeah, and in addition to being on the Oversight Committee, the other committee on which I serve is the Foreign Affairs Committee. So obviously we deal a lot with our relations with China and with Taiwan. I thought the part that was most disturbing wasn't so much the call. Foreign policy analysts can debate the merits of that. His two tweets after the call were the most disturbing. You know, whether one thinks the call is a good idea or not, this is the first time an American leader has spoken to a Taiwanese leader since 1979. So clearly this call is a big deal. The fact that he tweeted out, well, she called me, as if it was no big deal, it's just a congratulatory call, that shows shocking ignorance. And I hope that this is not a situation where he just stumbled into inadvertently changing U.S. foreign policy. And I have to say, for those of our allies around the world and a lot of the national security folks in Washington, both Democrats and Republicans, who are deeply concerned about the knowledge of this incoming president-elect, an incident like last night did absolutely nothing to allay their fears.
And so does it make a difference in your view that in that tweet, and hopefully we can pull it up because we did have that tweet where he says, you know, she called me. Interesting how the U.S. sells Taiwan billions of dollars of military equipment, but I should not accept a congratulatory call. That's the second tweet that he said in response to critics. He says that he was called by the president. Reportedly, there was a Trump advisor who's in Taiwan who may have facilitated that call. What is the real objective, in your view, and potential gain that you would see Donald Trump having by accepting this call? And there's the first tweet you were talking about. The president of Taiwan called me today to wish me congratulations on winning the presidency. Thank you.
Right, and that gives the impression, rather than a tweet saying, look, this is obviously a significant policy shift for the first time since 1979. Here, I'm going to give a speech detailing the reasons why I think this is important. None of that, just, oh, well, you know, she just happened to call me, no biggie. Clearly, this is a big deal, and I hope that he at least knew that and wasn't just talked into this by one foreign policy advisor close to him. I know Trump and his family have extensive financial dealings in Taiwan, so they do already have an pre-existing business relationship that I hope then doesn't bleed into the foreign affairs of the United States.
Okay, and that's kind of the press letter, these relations that he may have with at least 25 countries around the world, with his 500 businesses. And Donald Trump says that he is going to cut ties. He'll be handing everything over by mid-December. Why do you say it's not enough that his children would be the ones to be running the business, and that is separation enough from this president-elect?
Well, we can just walk through a couple simple, concrete examples. So right down Pennsylvania Avenue from the White House is the new Trump Hotel, which he actually leases the property. Historic old post office building. The lease, it's a 60-year lease signed with the head of the GSA, the General Services Administration. It's the head of the GSA that approves and negotiates that lease. Donald Trump, as president, will now be appointing the head of the GSA, who in turn will have to negotiate a lease with the Trump organization. That's clearly a conflict. There's another, and potentially more serious in terms of U.S. policy. Right now, the Department of Justice is in talks to file a settlement against Deutsche Bank for a number of bad practices to the tune of billions of dollars. Well, Deutsche Bank is also the same bank that holds over $2 billion of loans by Donald Trump. So it's a little concerning that...
So is it your view that because his name remains on the business, even though it may be run by his daughter or his sons, that there is still some influence and interest that Donald Trump would have in the successes of these businesses?
There's clear influence and interest, personal interest that he would have. And also, unlike all of the previous presidents, Democrats and Republicans, who have put their holdings into a blind trust, this by definition cannot be a blind trust. he knows that the Trump organization, whether he may technically remain the owner or not, he knows it's the Trump organization that has the hotel at the old post office building. He knows that it's the Trump organization that right now is being sued by a union that's attempting to organize, and that decision is going to be made by the NLRB, an NLRB that he's going to appoint. Yeah. So these are a number of conflicts that he has that unless he and his family completely liquidate their holdings whatsoever, completely sell it off, these will be unprecedented conflicts that the President of the United States will have.
We're going to have to leave it right there. Congressman Brendan Boyle, thank you so much. We're continuing